Hi there. In this video, I'll take a look at how we can use Bridge to open up a document in Adobe Illustrator, as well as a raw camera file in Photoshop, and then we'll use those two documents to create a business card. So I've got a file I've downloaded here. This is on my LMS. I'm going to unpack it into a folder in my documents, which I'll then add to a favorite in Adobe Bridge, which is basically like Adobe's file manager. So I'm just going to open up my File Explorer. I'm using Windows. And I'm going to go to Documents. So I've got my File Explorer here. There's the file I've downloaded. This is on my desktop. And I've got documents. I'm going to create a new folder called Adobe Creative Cloud. And this is where I'll put all of my files for all of my lessons that I work through in these videos. I'll use the exact same folder for all of the demonstrations. So libraries, documents, Adobe Creative Cloud, and I'll just drag this zip into there. I'm going to right click on it. I've got WinRAR, so I can just extract here, but if you don't, you can also use extract all. And I'll just accept the location, which will be the location that the zip resides in. And I don't need that zip anymore, but I'm just going to keep it in case I need to repeat the lesson. So for those of you who want to do it a couple of times, just keep that zip there. Once you're done, you can delete the lesson one and unpack that, and you'll have a fresh version of the files. So I'm done obtaining my zip file there and unpacking it, so I can close my File Explorer. I'm just going to delete this. There's another one available in my LMS, and I'm going to open up Adobe Bridge. So I'm going to the Start program, and I've got Adobe Bridge in my Start menu. Again, Adobe Bridge is Adobe's file management software. So I've got my documents here. There's the folder I just created, Adobe Creative Cloud, and I want to add that to favorites so that it's quickly accessible via this list. So I'm just going to drag that right into favorites here and click on Adobe Creative Cloud. There's my lesson one. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm just going to quickly add a bit of metadata to this sleepingbag.tiff. So notice that we have these little rating stars. So if we feel pretty good about this, we can make this a rating of 3. And then up on the edit menu, the label menu, we have all of these preset categories. So for example, if we had worked up this photo, we've gone through Photoshop with it, we sent it off to our coordinator or manager, they approved it, we can now mark it approved. So we don't have to have a second folder called approved within lesson one folder or something like that. And we can also, under file properties, we also have some metadata here. So we have this IPTC core, which allows us to add keywords, as well as a whole bunch of other information about this file. So metadata is information about the file or information. So under keywords, I'm going to type in separated by commas or semicolons, and if I just click on that little check mark at the bottom of the window there, it applies those keywords. So that's basically a little bit about you can consider this tagging and categorizing these files, and it'll make them a little easier to find as well as organizing stuff. Now I want to open up this stationary start. So I'm just going to double click on that right in Bridge, and it'll open it up in Adobe Illustrator. Just takes a moment. There we go. So this file contains 2 artboards, and I want to move them around so that they're basically I want to have the stationery here, the envelope next to it, and a little business card made up of some of the contents of these things, as well as an image that we're going to modify in Photoshop. So if I choose View, Guides, I'm going to unlock the guides. So basically those red borders and the little blue borders, those have a certain purpose. If they're locked, when I move the artboards, they'll stay where they presently are, and the artboard will be moved away from them. So the guides will still, they basically won't have any function on the artboard. So if you unlock them, then they'll move when I move the artboards. And we'll look at what these artboards are in more depth as we work through the programs. So I'm going to choose, if you want to move an artboard, you use your artboard tool. And it's the appearance of it has evolved in the toolbar somewhat. In this version, it has a little crossboard with a little page. And you can also get to that artboard tool using Shift-O. And we'll look at these this toolbar in more depth later on. So when I mouse into the artboard, it gives me a 4-headed arrow. I could just drag that, and I'm just going to put it right about there. And I'm going to move the envelope up next to it. Now notice you get those little lines pop up to allow you to align stuff. So I want to align, basically that should be the top edge of the document with the top edge of the envelope with the top edge of the stationery. That looks good to me. If you want to nudge this, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard. If you use Shift with your arrow keys, it nudges them a bit more quickly. Now I want to create a brand new artboard, so I can just click and drag. I want to make a 3.5 by 2 inch artboard for a business card. So I'm just going to put it right about there. And notice I get a little width, 3.13, and I want 3.5 by 2. So I'm going to drag out something close to that. There we go, looks pretty good. Now notice over here on the Properties panel, and if you don't presently see that, you can choose View and open up Window, and open up the Properties panel. And I want to change that to be 3.5. So I'm just going to type in 3.5 and then double quotes. That's inches. Or you can type in IN for inches, and that'll give you inches. CM will give you centimeters. 2 and the inches symbol. Now I also have a name field for it, which is the same as this field here. So you can put a name for this artboard. Notice this is called envelope, this is called stationery, this will be called business card. You could put that there or here. I'm going to call it, and I'll press enter to add that. So now it's named business card. Now I want to add presently that red outline, that's the bleed mark. So basically if you want to avoid any white slivers when the stock, the thing that you send to the printer is cut, then you want, for background images and whatnot, you want them to bleed. You want them to go well outside of the edge of the actual material that you're cutting, so that if the cutting is somewhat off-centered or too small or something like that, we don't get any little stripes of the stock color showing up. So that's what the red outline is. I'm going to add another guide to the inside edge of the artboard as well. Basically, you want to keep anything that you are printing away from that guide. You can rest assured that if anything resides within those guides, then it will not be cut off by the printer or any other tools. So what I'm going to do is just zoom into this business card. So to do that, I can click on my magnifying glass, zoom tool, or type in Z and just draw a box around it by clicking and dragging. That's my favorite way to zoom in. to a particular selection. Now what I'm going to do is add guides to 3/16 inside this edge. So first of all, what I want to do is make this corner 0. Notice it's kind of off. I want to make that 0 here and here so we can quickly measure 3/16 to the inside edge. So the way you do that is you drag this corner here right to the corner of the item. So I want that to be 0. And notice it sets up as 0. Now in order to get the guides, we have guides for the document as well as the artboard. If you want to add artboard guides, you add them using the artboard tool. If you want them for the document, you use the selection tool. We'll take a look at that later on. So I want to drag right from the ruler. So I just mouse inside of the ruler with my artboard tool. So I've clicked on that to select it, and I click that, and I want to make it 3/16, which is right about there. Now if you want it to snap a little bit more closely to the 16th, you can hold down Shift on your keyboard, and you notice it's not snapping on the ruler, but it is snapping on the material. So that's snap to 3/16. And I'll do the same thing up here. 3/16, right? I'll do the same thing down here. That's a quarter, so that's 3/16. There we go, that's 3/16. 1/16 less than a quarter, and another one way over here. Should be 3/16. All right, so again, those guides, I want to stay inside of those guides to avoid having any printed material being cut off. This guide is so that we don't get any of the stock showing behind a background image. So I'm going to quickly save this document. Since I've done a bit of work, it's a good time to save now. I'm going to save it as stationery. And I'll go to Documents, Adobe Creative Cloud, Lesson 1, and I'll call it Stationery. And save. And I'll just choose OK for this. Illustrator 2020, and all of the defaults is fine. All right, so now what I want to do is open up a photograph, which is in RAW format, and manipulate it a bit in Photoshop, resize it, and add a blur. And then I want to place it into this Adobe Illustrator document. So I'm going to go ahead and open up. I still have Bridge running, so I'm just going to click on Bridge. And I'm just going to double click on this hiking 0503. When I do that, it opens it up in Photoshop in this camera raw dialog. I don't want to do anything with this. It's already set up properly, but basically we can manipulate the color balance, the white, black, mid-tone, stuff like that, which we'll get into in another document. So I'm just going to choose Open. And then it opens up in Photoshop. And again, we'll take a look at a closer look at Photoshop in more detail later on. We're just going to do a couple of things with this photograph right now. So the first thing I want to do is crop it to be the correct size and resolution for print. Print is 300 pixels per inch, and we want to make it 3.5 by 2, but slightly larger because of the bleed. So if I click on this little tool here, this is my crop, and I'm going to pick up width times height times resolution. I'm going to make this a little larger, 2.25 inches, and I'm going to make it a little larger than 3.5, so basically a 1/4 inch bigger. So we have that bleed, 3.75 inch, and 300 pixels per inch. You notice it was already plugged in for me because I've already used this same cropping. And to apply that, we click on the little check mark here, commit current crop operation. And to zoom in, just like in Illustrator, we can click on our magnifying glass and zoom in. Now, I'm just going to zoom out slightly. So notice I got to have a plus sign. If I click with my zoom tool, I zoom in, but if I alt click, I'm holding down alt on my keyboard, option on Mac. Let's click once so I can see the entire image. Now I'm going to use this blur tool that allows us to choose a straight line where a blur starts. So basically I want all of this blurred so the detail doesn't interfere with any text. So in order to add that blur, we go to Filter, Blur Gallery, and I'm going to use Tilt Shift. And then if you just drag, so you just click, sorry, if you just drag that circle to the area that you want unblurred, so I want to make sure the people and the grass are not blurred. Now this is the amount of time or amount of distance that we have from sharp to blur. So we can drag that. Notice how that gets sharper later if we drag that up. I want it quite blurry, but I don't want it to be immediately blurry. So right about there. Something like that. And then we also have the amount of blur. I'm going to add 35 for blur. So you'll see that it becomes quite a bit blurry. Quite a bit more blurry, that is. So I'm done with this document. I'm going to save it as a very transferable and usable file. Basically it flattens it and then we can share it. It becomes quite small, and it's also got a compression algorithm that we can apply, so I'll choose File, Save As, apply the blur, and I'm going to save it as a TIFF. My documents, and it goes to the same location we opened it from. I'll choose Save. It asks us what type of options. I'm going to use zip compression. You don't have to worry too much about what that means, but just know that zip compression is a good one. And choose OK. So we're done with Photoshop. We could just close it. And I'll click back on Illustrator. Now I want to place that image into this business card. So basically you just have to click on the artboard and it'll be placed. So I choose File, Place. I pick up my TIFF and I'm going to click right on the bleed because I want the image to be right there. And there we go. And since we resized it already to be exactly the same size as the bleed, basically a 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 inch outside of the artboard, all the way around, it's placed exactly on that bleed edge. Next thing I'm going to do is grab the logo from the stationery and put it here, and grab some of the additional information from the stationery as well as the envelope and place it here, as well as manipulate that somewhat. So I'm just going to zoom out. The way you can quickly zoom out in both Illustrator and Photoshop is by double clicking on your magnifying glass. And I want to grab this background as well as this text here, this logo, and stick it over here. And I'm going to resize it so it fits a little better. It's kind of big over here. So if I click on my selection tool, and then I just mouse over that pluralist till I get the little box. I'm going to click once. That selects that entire logo. Now I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard and mouse into the background. There we go. And click. So now I have the background and the logo. So I clicked on the pluralist, held down Shift, and clicked on the background. Now I want to make a copy of it and put it onto the business card. So if I hold down Alt on my keyboard and drag, notice you get two little arrows there. That means you're going to be making a copy. It's an option on the Mac. So Alt drag, and I'm going to put it right on the bleed edge. Now notice when I click away it disappears. That's because this photograph is in front of it and it's large. So I want to send that photograph to the very back of the stack. So presently we have two items in the stack. We've got a photograph, we've got the logo in its background. This image, of course, is bigger than both, and they're in the same position, so it's obscuring it. So if we choose Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And now we can see the pluralist. Now I'm going to use my direct selection tool. That allows me to basically, in effect, you get kind of a cropping result. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can see a little better what I'm doing here. There we go. I'll click on my direct selection tool, and I'm just going to click away, make sure I don't have anything selected, and then I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard. That'll constrain my modifications to be in I think it's 45-degree angles, so I won't accidentally warp this thing. So I hold down Shift and I click the edge, and I'm going to just drag it to about halfway through the card. Something like that. So that kind of basically cropped that item. And then I'm going to do the same thing with pluralist. I'm going to move it and resize it into the printable area. So I want to make sure it doesn't go outside of those marks. And I want to make it a little smaller. So if I click with my selection tool, I just mouse on it until I get that. There we go, that rectangle there. Now, if I hold down Shift and drag on a corner handle, that resizes proportionally. The width will resize at the same ratio as the height. And that looks like a pretty good size to me. Now I'm just going to tap my arrow keys to reposition it. So it's just inside of that printable area. Something like that is pretty good. So I'm done with that portion of it. What I'm going to quickly do now is just copy and paste using Alt drag some of the material from the envelope. So I'm going to double click on my magnifying glass to zoom out. I'm going to click on my selection arrow there, selection tool, and I'm going to hold down, just going to mouse onto this area here, click. That selects the entire box. Notice I got the box around everything, and then I clicked. Then I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and just drag that down into the printable area of my business card. Now, presently, the way this text box works is anything larger than this edge here will be obscured. So I want to drag that edge down because I'm going to have two more lines of text. So I'm going to click on my selection tool, and I'm just going to drag that little white handle on the bottom edge down to give myself a room for two more lines of text. Now I'm going to copy and paste the text from the envelope, the phone number and the web address. So again, I'll double click on my magnifying glass tool. I'll click on my text tool this time, my type tool, and I'm going to click right here in this text and drag across the phone number. And then I'm going to go edit copy, and then I'll do the same thing. And this text here, I'll click with my text tool, with my type tool at the end of this line. I'll press Enter, gives me a new line, and then I'll go Edit Paste. There we go. And then I'll double click on my magnifying glass and grab that pluralist.com. Enter and paste. You notice it gets split to 2 lines. So what I need to do is just resize this text. Now a good font size, you'll see on this on most business cards, is 8 points. So I'm going to select all of this text. So if I just click anywhere inside of the text there and go Control A, that selects everything. And since I'm using my text tool, we get the text manipulation properties here. I'm going to go font size 8. Now it fits nicely inside of that area, and I'm going to make the font color white so it stands out nicely against that dark background. So this is our fill color here, and I'm just going to choose white. Now I want to do one more thing. I want to add a drop shadow. I'm going to make it 0.1 distance, X and Y, and I'm going to make it 0.1 blur. And that's the last thing we'll need to do for this business card. So under properties, we have this little effects. And if I click on that, I want to stylize. Oh, we have to select our text box, not our actual text. So I click on my selection tool. There we go. Now this is selected. Now I choose stylize and drop shadow. I'm going to make all of these 0.01 of an inch. There we go. And okay. And you notice how much more that text stands out from the background. You'll see that in subtitles all the time. Now to get a better idea of what this looks like, we're going to hide the guides and deselect, and then we'll see what our business card looks like. One thing I might want to do is move that pluralist in a little bit. There we go. I think that's a little better. Basically, I should have it centered within the printable. I would say within the actual business card, not the printable area, but the business card. There we go. Now to get a better idea of how that looks, I can go to View, Guides, Hide Guides, and then Select, Deselect. So there is our business card. So again, we quickly used Bridge to add some metadata to some of the files, as well as to open the files. We opened an Adobe Illustrator template, saved it as an Adobe Illustrator file, opened up a photograph, which we then placed into the Adobe Illustrator file. So try this out yourself. That's your exercise for this week. One of your exercises for this week, I should say. And do it a couple of times. And once you do that, you'll have a kind of a clear idea of how to create a business card. Thanks so much for watching.